Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth video. Today we're going to be taking an early look, at the Windwalker Monk. Now, the reason why I've chosen the Windwalker is because it's quite different to yesterday's class preview, which was the Survival Hunter. Survival is pretty much a brand new spec. Windwalker, though, isn't, but really why I think it's interesting to cover is that it represents moving on from Legion and moving on from the Artifact Weapon era in a way that I think is quite good. So we do have an option in our talents that's quite similar to the old gameplay, but we also have another option which gives us a bit of a new mechanic to play around with, which overall I think is a pretty good way to do things. Now, of course, it's worth remembering, right now I'm level 110, all my ratings are going to be a little bit lower, right? This class that we see here is going to be modified by Azerite gear. Now, Azerite gear is pretty much a mixture of what artifacts did, what some of legendaries did, and what some of sets did. So this very much is the base template. But the reason really is just, yeah, this class, I think, it's a class that was very good in Legion, and therefore it's one that is, I think, quite cleanly made the transition over, so I want to give you an example of that. Okay, the first thing you'll notice is a lot of our core things are pretty similar to how they were in terms of the core spells and all of that, but one thing I want to bring up is leg sweep. Now, why am I bringing up leg sweep? Well, previously it was a talent, but it's one of those times when Blizzard have decided that leg sweep, well, your character's a monk, right? Therefore, they think that leg sweep is sort of a part of the core monk class identity. Therefore, leg sweep is baseline for every spec. And one thing that you'll see throughout the Battle for Azeroth class changes is that there are instances like this where something is baselined, and there's also instances where some things are removed from a spec because Blizzard no longer think it really is a core of what that spec should be. A good example, actually, of this also done in another class is Shamans. They now all baseline have 2 totems. They're pulled out of the talents and just given to the Shamans because Blizzard have thought, you know what, the Shamans, they should have those totems. Now, things get a little bit more interesting for the actual monk players when we head into the talents, so let's just go do that. First of all, Tier 1, you know what, it's pretty much what you know, so let's hop over to Tier 2. Tier 2 is a little bit strange because we've got Clarity here. We can also choose Chi Torpedo in the 75 tier, which means we have 3 stacks of Chi Torpedo, so we can pretty much do this utterly silly thing, right? I can do 3 of those, and then I can fly all the way back with Flying Serpent Kick, which of course I did terribly, so anytime someone tells you Demon Hunters have overpowered movement, nah, show them a monk, we're the most fun. So yeah, that's what's going on there, a little bit funky. We also have Healing Elixir here, which is competing against 2 movement talents, which is a little bit odd, but it's not really the most interesting tier. The next tier, though, the 45 one, will be very interesting to monk players. So Ascension increases your maximum chi by 1, maximum energy by 20, and your regen by 10. So over Legion, this is now giving you an additional 20 maximum energy. Now, this will all become a little bit clearer when we move over to Energizing Elixir, because it's a big topic within the monk sort of community. Now, next, Power Strikes. Every 15 seconds, your Tiger Palm will generate 1 additional chi and do 200% additional damage. And then Energizing Elixir. So previously, right, 1 minute cooldown, it would refill all your resources, which would mean that before you wanted to use Energizing Elixir, you would want to pretty much have used all of your resources, which was sometimes a bit tricky. It was one of the harder parts of playing Windwalker Monk. What have Blizzard done? Well, they've made it so that it refills all your energy and instantly generates 2 chi. This overall does mean it's easier to use Energizing Elixir optimally, and when we compare all of these 3, what you see is they've been moved closer together in terms of power. So likely Energizing Elixir is still going to be the higher skill pick that will perform better, but the difference between the worst player and the best player is maybe just, shrunk a little bit. Now, the tier that really made me want to do this video, though, is level 60 tier, because it represents moving on from our artifact weapon. So Strike of the Windlord was a decently long cooldown, and it gave us 3 chi. It hasn't been replaced with Fist of the White Tiger, but Fist of the White Tiger is a new ability, 40 energy, instant, 30-second cooldown, does a stack of damage, and gives you 3 chi. So it has the chi-generating, implications that Strike of the Windlord did. So if I run up to a target, you can sort of see I get a bit of a Juan-style fisting sort of animation. Wow, that was phrasing. Anyway, 40 energy, yeah, you can see, though, it didn't actually give me any chi. It's just a bit bugged at the minute. But we then have Combo Breaker, so this is pretty cool. Whenever Tiger Palm causes your Blackout Kick effect, which is basically a free reset of Blackout Kick, the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick is reset. So this is an entirely new bit of Monk gameplay that is different from what we saw on Legion. So if you like the Legion style in terms of how it felt with the Chi regeneration, not necessarily the AoE damage, you can go with Fist of the White Tiger, but if you want to try something a little bit new and different, you can go for Combo Breaker. So with how Combo Breaker works, we're just going to go into combat, right? I've just used my Rising Sun Kick, and hopefully we'll get a free reset here at some stage. Oh, and also a new baseline part of Blackout Kick that I totally forgot to mention, and I love because it's awesome. Blackout Kick now reduces the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick and Fist of Fury by 1 second when used. And I think this is a really great part of advancing the spec onward from Legion, because one thing that would sort of happen to you in Legion is you get into that pattern of just going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, maintaining your mastery and your hit combo, but it just sort of felt like you were waiting until you could really get to the big two. Well, now there is more synergy between the abilities of your spec, which I think is a really, really cool thing. And then, of course, the Combo Breaker talent really further compounds on that. It's a little bit frustrating if you say end up chunking it, right? But at some point, I will get this proc. At some point. Okay, are we going to get lucky here? Wow. This is, it always is when you're trying to demo something that you don't exactly get the luck that you're looking for. Yeah, I just got the proc right when I had used Rising Sun Kick, so I didn't actually get my free charge. So that's very satisfying. Okay, there we go. So, as you can see, what this is doing is it's putting a little bit more of the RNG into your spec. Now, as always, that you then have the question, well, is it good RNG? Is it bad RNG? I think it is at what you could call a tasteful level. It sort of changes up the pace of things, but overall it's it's not like, say, Roll the Bones, right, where it makes you livid most of the time. So yeah, 2 different gameplay styles, and then we're also always having the augment of the new Blackout Kick, which has a cooldown reduction mechanic built in, and of course those cooldown reduction mechanics are one of my favorite things in the game. I really do like them a hell of a lot. Plus, the GCD of this spec is also affected by haste, so as time goes on, this will scale rather nicely. So when we get all that tasty Azerite gear, I think the pacing will be pretty damn awesome when it comes to how this spec functions. Plus, another slight thing with some of the Legion gameplay is you have this kind of issue where you didn't want to break your hit combo or your mastery, so you end up just sort of throwing in a chi wave to to keep that going, so you're not using the same ability twice in a row. Well, with these cooldown reduction mechanics, I think that little sort of hitch in the gameplay will be smoothed over. Once again, I think a pretty cool advancement from the Legion formula, showing us good tweaks and refinements. So there you go, that is what's going on with this tier. When we move on, we've got Inner Strength. When you spend Chi, produces damage taken by 3% for 4 seconds. Not very exciting. Chi Torpedo, right now it's a baseline of 2 charges. I'd be very surprised if Chi, Torpedo, and Clarity end up in the same tier, because the amount of movement that I have right now is kind of ludicrous. I suppose Blizzard could put it, or make it this way, because it is such a ludicrous amount of speed that it's fun to have, but it's not necessarily a extremely powerful thing in a raid scenario, bar niche things, because realistically, when do you need to do 3 Chi Torpedoes in a row followed by a Flying Serpent Kick? Like, that's a lot of distance. Okay, then we also have Diffuse Magic. Okay, let's move on. Hit combo, successive strikes, trigger combo strikes, which grants 1% increased damage, stacking up to 6 times. Only 1% though, so this has been, it's pretty much half as powerful. Could be that that's just to give us, open up these other options, such as Rushing Jade Wind. Now, Rushing Jade Wind is now a little bit different as well. 4 energy plus 4 per second. It's a little bit like one of those shaman abilities that was put in Wind something. I've forgotten its name. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's a constant sort of drain in your resources. So if I, throw this up now, this will constantly be sucking away my energy. So yeah, that is a bit of a new mechanic, I suppose. I would probably still go with hit combo, to be honest, but yeah, decently cool. Certainly having built-in AoE by default would be pretty damn handy. And then, of course, we have Zhuan, who is operating the same way that he always has. Now, when we move on to the 100 tier, you probably remember Chi Orbit, or whatever it was called, right? No one used it. It wasn't that great. Wasn't that fun. It's gone. It's replaced with Wind Strikes, which is a passive. So this is kind of the one that you click on if you just, you don't really want to deal with the other mechanics. It's pretty much one that I would never use, but yeah, I suppose it's good to have as an option, and it is better than the sort of orbit situation. So whenever you use Fists of Fury, your next 3 Tiger Palm attacks release a gust of wind that does physical damage to enemies in front of you. I suppose it is pretty cool in an AoE scenario. I'd still rather have Whirling Dragon Punch, of course, and it's nice that instead of just giving you a tiny bit of damage, I suppose you do actually have to use it properly, right? You've got to aim it at targets, so there's a little bit more gameplay in there. Plus, it does have a built-in resource generation mechanic, right? Because those stacks of the empowered Tiger Palm, you definitely want those. And yeah, it's another thing to manage and sort of keep track of. Let's just turn off our turn that off, and you can see I'm sort of got these little gusts of wind that happen after I do a Tiger Palm. So that's what's going on there. We've got Whirling Dragon Punch. It's pretty much the same as it was. It's awesome. 20-second cooldown. It you do your big whirly kick, and you can only use it when Fist of Fury and Rising Sun Kick are off cooldown. Of course, for me, this plays lovely with hit combo. It's another thing that I can, fill that in with, and it plays nicely with your mastery as well. Plus, I like the idea of getting the two of these off cooldown, planning for when Whirling Dragon Punch comes off cooldown. Overall, very satisfying gameplay. And then we've got Serenity, replace your Storm, Earth, and Fire, and yeah, you do 40% increased damage and healing, and all chi consumers are free and cooldown 100% more quickly, so pretty much you do some sort of Super Saiyan thing and go a little bit mad. For me, Whirling Dragon Punch probably is the one that I want, because I love Storm, Earth, and Fire. I think it's very cool. That overall, though, is what's going on with the Windwalker Monk. As somebody who started to main a Windwalker Monk in about July, I think this is really nice. It is smoothing over a few of the little, quirks of the spec and bringing it forward, putting in some new mechanics, which overall I think is just fantastic. I do appreciate that for a lot of experienced Monk players, the people who were always nailing those energizing elixirs every 60 seconds, I get that for those guys it might be, this could be knocking you down a peg a little bit. For me, I can totally get that perspective, but I don't think it's a humongous problem, especially in the face of lots of other, I think, very positive changes. So there you go, a bit of a look at the Windwalker Monk. You know what? It's probably still my favorite melee spec in the game. There's a good chance I'll keep on maining it in Battle for Azeroth. And yeah, pretty awesome, pretty damn hyped. We will, of course, have loads more class content on the channel as time goes on, so I'll be keeping you updated on all of that. So stay tuned, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.